Jubilost not trouble. That is the name of our new treasurer. Let's get familiar with him. Jubilost is chaotic neutral gnome, as we know, and level 5 alchemist. This is very practical. We don't actually have alchemist around, and his skills are... Whoa, he also has stealth 11. His skills are quite nice, I actually like them. And so are his stats, intelligence 19. Renowned explorer. His quick and curious mind led Jubilost to the Stolen Lands. He wanted to witness with his own eyes how our new nation flourishes, and left Absalom itself to do so. Renowned explorer, famous archer, and all-around extraordinary person, Jubilost Nartrouble has one of the special talent. He can infuriate particularly anyone he speaks with, as was the case with Valerie. Though, Valerie actually shares the same rare talent, but let's not get into it. He has plenty of useful abilities like Alchemist Bomb, and his feats include Precise Shot, Ability Focus, Bombs +2 to the DC of all saving throws against your bombs. Of course, throw anything, point blank shot. You are quite good. Obsessive. Gnomes receive +2 racial bonus on acknowledged word check. Oh, they do. Wait, they do? They do. We might want to hang on to this guy. I will take him along at some point. Just don't know when. But we will take him along. Hello, Jubilost. Jubilost raises his head and closes his notebook. Ah, it is you. How can I help you? What are you jotting down in your notebook all the time? Notes on our adventurers. Good ideas that come to mind. I don't know how it is with you, but in my case, my mind is constantly producing thoughts and ideas worthy of writing down. Some I use in my articles and books, others I will share with the audience next time I speak at Foray Logos in Absalom. Some other thoughts should be kept out of the public view for a while. Our world isn't yet ready for certain revelations. Tell me about yourself. I've heard this request so many times. Well, as we're traveling together, I suppose I can give you an interview. Free of charge, of course. Okay. Thank you. Where are you from? All of Golarion is my home. I'm a citizen of the world. Some might say my home is Absalom, that great old patchwork city. It's there that my books and magazine articles are published, and there I am held in particularly high esteem, owing to my vast knowledge. In fact, once I was invited to the College of Mysteries itself, but I prefer to think of Absalom not as home, but headquarters where I go plan my next adventure. I've visited every country worth mentioning, in Avistan and Garund. I've even trotted the exotic lands of the Yangxia. I've seen miracles you couldn't even imagine, and in every place I've been, there was a home that wouldn't have gladly received a renowned explorer such as myself. The famous name of Jubilost Nartrouble is known even in the most remote corners of the world. Well, nice to know that we finally caught up with that. Still, where you were born. You know, the line between persistence and how do you spell this? Importunity, now I know how to spell this, is very thin. And you risk crossing that line. Do you think I haven't mentioned my birthplace because of my forgetfulness? I was born in Taldor, if you must know. The Empire is in decline nowadays, but still cherishes the illusions of its past glory. It's a country turned by prejudice. In Taldor, my mind was trapped in a cage of restrictions, birthright, poverty, and their beggars be damned attitude. I left the country as soon as I understood it. Taldor, the mighty empire of Taldor, once stretched from the Arcadian Ocean to the border of the patrician empire of Gales. Aroden himself was said to walk among the people of Taldor, and his religion, a shining beacon unto the world, radiated outward from Taldor's gilded capital of Opara. Taldor's ancient armies of exploration established footholds for the empire throughout Golarion, and its mighty phalanxes marched for thousands of miles during the Shining Crusade to beat back the Whispering Tyrant. Now Taldor is a stunted remnant of its old glory, having lost control of its total territories, and is almost ignored by the powerful countries of the day, which assume it will continue its slow decline for at least another century. I think we have read this bit before, but I don't remember if it was read from here or from a book. So, if you ever try to rekindle any patriotic feelings in me, you'll be disappointed. My first article in The Independence was about Taldor. The magazine was almost closed as a result of the scandal that followed, and it would have been closed were it not for crowds of my supporters marching in protest under the windows of the publishing house, making its editors change their minds. Okay, that is good to know. You have some fans then. So you write books and magazine articles? I certainly do. I am too generous not to share my thoughts and journeys with other minds who search for knowledge. Judging from your face, you don't belong in that category. What? Oh, Jubilost. Among my scientific works, I'd recommend the range of articles published in National Alchemy. If you prefer lighter reading, you might like Traveller's Essays or the scandalous The Independence. If pictures capture your attention better than words, page through the illustrated Atlas of Avistan, and you should give your cook a volume or two of my culinary almanacs. Trust me, it might help. I actually have your culinary almanac. Some have tried to blame me for a sleazy romance novel called The Five Scenes of Sarenrae. I have no idea on who spreads these crazy rumors, but if you like such frivolity, I've been informed that the novel's sequel, The Sixth Sin, was recently published. Ah, Jubilost. You wear glasses, why don't you ask some cleric to heal your eyesight? I'm sure you could have figured out the answer to that question on your own if you bothered to use logical approach. At least I sincerely hope so. I prefer to think of you as a lazy person, not a stupid one. I'm not dumb, but I'm not brilliant. Well then, I suppose it's my fate to enlighten you. Alright, there's no time like the present. Ooh. Let's build up to a logical conclusion together. So, starting with the obvious. A cleric's service cost several hundred gold coins. Spectacles cost a dozen gold coins. So maybe I just couldn't afford to pay the cleric? Incorrect conclusion. I earned enough, besides some clerics would surely help me free of charge because they are fans of my incredible talent. The answer can't be the money then, so what it is? Let's explore further. Surely you've noticed that I'm a rather famous person. Just to be clear, with circles I'm famous in, my scientific articles are well known among the students and teachers of various institutions of higher education. My articles that satirize the rich and powerful are extremely popular among the minor nobility, traders and workers. That is, among anyone who doesn't have any power for themselves. The kind of people who don't usually have enough money to afford an expensive cleric. Well, can you add it up and find the right answer yet? Jubilost doesn't let you get a single word. My spectacles are something that unites me with my readers. People are more open to those who share their social status. Many of my readers can't afford to heal their eyesight at the temple, so when I, too, refuse such healing, I become closer to the people. My spectacles are part of my image. I believe I managed to explain the basics of logical thinking, no need to thank me. If you have explained me the logics with that example, fine, but I might slightly... Well, I understand you, but I don't think that is a logical approach, but perhaps it is a logical approach in your mind. You can basically justify everything with logic. You've traveled so much, tell me of your travels abroad. I've written a fair number of articles and essays on my journeys, and if you'll excuse me, I haven't the slightest desire to retell them all to you right now. If you wish to learn about foreign lands, pick up any issue of The Independence and read all you like. I'm sure you can find my magazines even in this hole of a place. Thanks for telling me about yourself. Let me ask you about something else while we are searching for the library that includes your life's work. I didn't see one around, but that's probably my fault. I'm the Baron. Tell me something about the history of the gnome race. What have I come to? Jubilost, famous explorer, writer and scientist, is reduced to giving simple lessons in history. Very well, ask away. What questions do you have? How did gnomes appear on Golarion? They came here in ancient times from the First World. You do know what the First World is, right? If you don't, ask me about it some other time. I used to lecture on it at a couple of institutes. The First World is so called because it is believed to be the god's first draft of a subsequent plane that would later split into the material plane and the shadow plane. It is coterminous with the material plane and the shadow plane, but exists outside the standard cosmology, being somehow behind the other two planes. Okay, that is a mindful. The unfinished First World lacks universal fixed laws of physics. Regions of the First World remain as test grounds for different, unfinished and sometimes mutatable and evolving physical properties. Gravity is inconsistent between the parts of the First World, and the speed of light is arbitrary and variable. Where these regions overlaps, the reactions between these inconsistent laws can be unpredictable. The First World is home to all manner of strange creatures, apparently prototype versions of the plants and animals of the material plane, although its chief inhabitants are Fae, the most powerful of which are the creatures known as the Eldest. Interesting. According to the understanding I've accumulated, the gnomes were an immortal race until some of our especially insightful ancestors came up with a brilliant idea. They decided it would be fun to learn how it feels to be mortal. I would like very much to meet those gnomes. I wouldn't even kick them, I'd just look in their eyes without a single word. Too bad they're all long dead by now. Good point. Jubilost. As everyone knows, a stupid enough idea can be extremely contagious. So, the gnomes got this infection, all of them, without a hope for cure. So they found a way to Golarion and decided to settle here. And, you'll never believe it, they got just what they wanted. They severed their link with the First World. They gained mortality, the bleaching and heap of local diseases that have been keeping our race on the verge of extinction ever since. The bleaching is the name given to the physical decolorization and aging of a gnome, and is caused by a lack of exposure to new and exciting experiences. This bleaching of color is accompanied by a psychological decline, first into depression and apathy, and eventually into madness and death. Gnome efforts to fend off bleaching only serve to fuel their racial curiosity and whimsy, giving it somewhat of a manic edge. Some claim that the bleaching is a result of the gnomes leaving the First World thousands of years ago. Rare gnomes survive the bleaching and develop an enigmatic wisdom and connection to the natural world, earning the name bleachlings. Do gnomes live long? Certainly, long and happily ever after. We'd lived as long as elves were it not for the bleaching. What's the curse of our race? That's the curse of our race, which only struck after the gnomes left the first world. To put it simply, gnomes must constantly have new experiences. If a gnome gets into a rut, so to speak, he bleaches. We start to lose color, literally. Our skin and hair become pale, and the worst thing is that our soul loses color too. If the process continues unchecked, the gnome dies. History recalls only a few cases where gnomes actually died of old age. Most of them perish either because of the bleaching or in the middle of some crazy adventure they joined just to stave it off. So, you travel so much as a way to fend off the bleaching? Jubilost stares at you, then nods slowly. You see, I enjoy being alive. I like to eat pancakes in the morning. I like to write articles for magazines. I like it when I leave the publishing house in Absalom. And a crowd of fans immediately mobs me, so I don't intend to die at the peak of my life because of some stupid ancient curse. But don't you dare imagine that everything I do is just for the fear of the bleaching. I tell people the truth about the world that surrounds them. My theoretical research aids the development of different branches of science in various institutes. Yes, sooner or later I'll bleach and die like any other gnome, but the name of the famous Jubilost Nartrapple will live throughout the ages. Let's change the subject. I'd like to learn more about the First World. If you've asked the right you've asked the right person. I am an expert in studying the First World. Give me your questions. The First World, what's it's like? It's huge, wild and extremely unfriendly to the unprepared traveler. Nothing remains constant there. Matter changes before your eyes. What was mountain yesterday becomes a river today, and that river flows upwards. The trees touch the sky. The heat of the desert can melt metal, and hurricane winds can tear a person apart. Hey, that sounds like a cheerful place. But it would be wrong to think of the First World as the plane of total destruction. Creation is just as important there. The deserts spring alive into forests, and when the hurricane subsides, animals emerge from hiding. Huge, wild and as untamed as the world itself. The First World epitomizes life in its original chaotic meaning. There's a theory that gods used the First World as a training ground to practice their ability to create matter. They then abandoned the First World to its own fate and wandered off to create Golarion. Some say that the inhabitants of the First World still hold a grudge against the gods for this. Well, that is an interesting thought. How can a person get there? Mainly throughout magical portals created by skilled magicians. But the price of such portal is usually in excess of several thousands gold coins. There is another way, of course. There are documented cases where spontaneous portals to the First World have opened in remote places of Golarion, where, as mages say, the boundaries between the two worlds has grown thin. But spontaneous portals are rather dangerous. You never know what's lurking on the other side. Only desperate adventurers and madmen use them, and of course romantic suicidal idiots who think that good common sense is too boring. Are there any sentient beings in the First World after gnomes left, of course? Of course, the Fae! And all their relatives, and all their relatives' relatives, and then some more Fae besides. Sometimes one meets leprechauns or Satyr's Tear, which are actually another type of Fae, just called by another name. And all of them are immortal, by the way, at least within their own home world. The souls of the creatures of the First World have no connection with the realm of mortals. When a creature of the first world dies, its soul just materializes in another body, similar to its old one. It's not a pleasant experience, and the resurrected creature loses almost all of the powers and abilities it developed over its life. Interesting. But keeps all its memories and personality. It's still much better than a mortal death, I would say. Sometimes the process doesn't even take long. A killer might meet his victim again the following week. Naturally, this immortality has influenced the way First World inhabitants think. For instance, Fae enjoy mischief and tricks that can easily end in someone's death. The Fae think it's just funny, and anyone from another world who falls victim to such tricks doesn't end up having much to say at all. Once the gnomes were immortal relatives of the Fae, Jubilost cites. Who rules the first world? It's commonly assumed that the eldest rule. They are overseers, but more just a glorified version of Fae lords. Power attracts pompous blockheads in every world. Remain silent. Jubilost gives you a critical stare. It's fortunate then that this problem doesn't trouble your lands at all. But let's get back to the first world. The eldest possess the power to keep matter in the first world in a more or less constant state. That's why the Fae treat them as demigods and offer the prayers just as we offer prayers to Desna, Erastil, or even Lamas too. You know a lot about the first world. Have you ever been there? I haven't the opportunity yet. Unfortunately, my studies of the first world are limited to confused statements of witnesses or scribbles in their diaries. Also, I've studied the remains of some unfortunates who periodically fall out of spontaneous portals. I keep the hope that sooner or later I'll manage to visit that wonderful place. And certainly, the notes I'd write on that place would be far more extensive and informative than all the ramblings on the subject I have had to wade through. Naturally, the main concern of my expedition would be the safety of its leader, namely me. It would be extremely foolish to go that far and see that much only to lose the chance to tell anyone about it. I'd like to talk about something else. You must know a lot about the first world. Ah. Tell me, why have you studied the first world so truly? I told you already, I like to be alive. I assure you, other gnomes share the same attitude. Between the bleaching, disease and old age, we have a lot to yearn for. But the ancient gnomes for some reason decided that mortality, the bleaching, and all the diseases of Golarion are preferable to the immortality of the first world. I can't do anything to change that, but I can do something with my own life. I want to find a way back to the first world for all the gnomes of Golarion. That is a good calling. Maybe. Unfortunately, to do this, I can't just gather up all the gnomes and send them marching through the nearest portal. We are too attached to Golarion now. We've lost our connection with the chaos of the first world. We've become too mortal, if you see what I mean. When a gnome dies in the first world, he dies forever, like any visitor. But there must be something that can be done to solve this problem, and I intend to find out what it is. Jubilost Nartrapple, the hero who returned the gnomes home. It has a nice ring to it, wouldn't you say? I'm not going to insult him. Yet. Thank you for the conversation. I have to go now. Come back when you run out of clever ideas again. That set of clever ideas included taking you along and making you our treasurer. Just saying. Where is Storyteller?
All according to plan.
As it should be. Right, does Storyteller have any information about items we found? We did found some things, yes. Shard of Knight's Bracers, Boot blackened brand and thorax pendant. Ah, your grace, my stories are calling for you. Have you come to answer their call? I brought some relics. Are any worth of a story? How interesting, may I, your grace? The storyteller touches the pendant with the thorax mark. Oh, the symbol of Thorak. The children of stone wear such pendants as protective talismans. I will gladly purchase any you have. 400 gold coins? Good deal. Oh now, here is something truly impressive. These items once belonged to a dwarven smith, and they wish to tell us their story. But too much has been lost. Too much forgotten. The story of this smith eludes me. Please find the rest of the 5 missing items and return them to me as soon as you can. Remember me should you find anything noteworthy. Now, just out of curiosity, do we have all of those items? I don't think we do. But we might have them soon.
In due time.
That's much about the stories today. So let's see. We have an ancient curse to deal with, and the next development is in 14 days and 12 hours. I don't think we have time to go trotting around too much. We will be here or investigating areas nearby, because we will have to visit the bald hilltop quite soon and we must prepare for it. And now I wonder if our new friend Jubilost could be helpful there, because he does seem to know quite a lot, but his knowledge is about the world, not arcane, and I believe curses are going under arcane, right? What is... or will they go under religion? We can't know. We will find out. And we will find out when we get there very soon.